and welcome to another episode of the Read Right to Left podcast. I am G, joined by my always wonderful co-host, Ray, from Whimsical Pictures.
Hi, guys.
And today we are going to be doing a creator spotlight, a creator that both of us, I would say, quite enjoy. And a little bit of a palette refresh from last month. This is the very popular, well, I don't know, much renowned Josei
cult
creator.
favorite.
That's the one. Moyoco Anno.
Yep.
Who we have quite a number of her series in English, actually.
Yep. Some of which are extremely out of print, and some of which are more widely available, particularly digitally. A lot of her stuff is easy to get digitally and not very easy to get in print these days. But yeah, so last month we talked about Everyone's Getting Married, a Josei series that didn't exactly charm us on reread. So we are this month talking about some Josei manga that perhaps we'll be more eager to recommend to you guys, our listeners. And certainly more, I guess, like, not quite avant-garde, but a little more, perhaps, literary in its ambitions. This is a creator who isn't exactly creating, fluffy, feel-good romances, generally.
No.
She also is considered to be a mangaka within the Gao manga movement, or Gyaru manga movement, along with, like, Kyoko Okazaki. So, yeah.
Yes, indeed. So, as Ray alluded to, there have been quite a number of Moyoco Anno's series released in English over the last couple decades. But a lot of her longer stuff, well, even her shorter stuff is not widely available, but a lot of her longer stuff is certainly incredibly hard to get. And I personally have not read her longer stuff because of said being very hard to get, and also not available in a digital format aside from probably scans, which we don't look very kindly on here. So I have yet to read either of her longer titles that we have seen licensed and released in English. So today we'll be focusing on some of her shorter titles.
And for those longer titles, I think we're mainly referring to her shoujo magical girl series, Sugar Sugar Rune, which I believe has an anime. Am I crazy?
I don't know. You might be hallucinating. I don't know.
I want to know, so I'm gonna look it up. Yeah, it does have an anime. Okay, I'm not crazy.
Oh,
I'm not
goodness.
hallucinating. Not this time.
Not this time.
And also her Josei series Flowers and Bees, which is in the messy people having messy drama genre of Josei manga, I would say. We do have this one in English, but it is far out of print. I read some of it at some point because I found it at a used bookstore, but it's not super easy to come by these days. Folks also may be aware of another series that she has that was adapted to anime, but the manga has never been released in English, called Hatarakiman, which is about the trials and tribulations of a hyper-competent working woman. We also won't be talking about that because, oh gosh, we don't have the manga, for one thing, and the anime was... I only have remember it ever being available through not scans, but fan subs. So.
Well, Hararakiman actually did get a Blu-ray release.
Okay.
Sentai released it.
One of those weird
a long time
Sentai
ago.
Releases.
Yes, but you can still get it in their sales for like $3 if you are so wanting.
There you go.
But yeah, it's not exactly the smash hit sensation that many people go to for for entertainment. Maybe.
All right. Well, I also wanted to just quickly name drop Insufficient Direction. This is like an autobiographical manga by hers, like kind of comedy focused. It's about the experience of being married to Hideaki Anno, the director of Neon Genesis Evangelion, who is notoriously a very eccentric otaku type. I didn't reread this one for this podcast, and I don't really have much to say about it. It's mostly just like, Hideaki Anno is exactly as wacky as you'd expect him to be. And Moyoco Anno is also there, which is a weird thing to be in your own manga about your own life, but you know, that's her choice.
I think it's just like, it's a testament to, like, I don't know, I don't want to call them a power couple of, like, Japanese popular media, or weeb media, maybe. But in the similar way that, like, it's kind of weird to think that the creators of Sailor Moon and Hunter x Hunter are married. It's this, like, I don't know. I guess you just find your people, right? It's a quirky enough industry that...
Nerd sees nerd.
Nerd sees nerd.
Yeah, so what we will mainly be talking about is the sort of shorter one-shot volumes that we have been getting, or have gotten in English over the years. Is we cool if I just list them out right now, the ones we're going to be talking about?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we have one called In Clothes called Fat. We have one called Sakuran, one called Buffalo Five Girls, and one called Memoirs of Amorous Gentlemen. The first of those deals with sort of the issues that a fat woman is dealing with just in her daily life as a working woman, and the drastic measures that she takes to try and lose weight. And the other three are all quite interesting in that they deal with overlapping subject matter, which is they are all about the lives and experiences of sex workers in various parts of the world, time periods, but
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I guess we could start by talking about In Clothes Called Fat, because this one has subject matter that's quite different from the other three. So, yeah. What is In Clothes Called Fat?
So, In Clothes Called Fat has been, I don't know if it's still widely available, but was released by Vertical. This is about as Ray said, a working woman, an office worker, who is, you know, she's heavier. She uses food to kind of suppress a lot of negative emotions, and she's not in a wonderful situation. She has a boyfriend who she's been with for a long time, but she's not doing very well at work. Nobody really likes her. She doesn't have a lot of friends, or any friends. Her boyfriend doesn't seem to actually want to spend any time with her. And so she uses food as a comfort. Yeah. As her
her boyfriend also doesn't seem to desire her, which is kind of a big thing as well. So
due to a myriad of just bad situations piling on top of each other, she eventually gets to a breaking point after meeting a eccentric old man who offers her or gives her a lot of money after touching up her thighs for a while and just
snorting her sweet fat.
Yeah. Waxing poetic about how beautiful and luscious and wonderful a fat person is.
Fat woman,
gives her a lot of money.
I think.
Well, yes. So she decides to use that money on weight loss treatment. Mm-hmm. It's spa kind of therapies and a diet plan in order for her to kind of snap out of herself, get hot, make her boyfriend like her again. He's having an affair with a very, very bitchy woman from her work.
Bitchy and beautiful.
Yes, bitchy and beautiful and extremely skinny. And sort of the polar opposite of our main character. So she takes this very drastic... Well, no, the clinic itself is not very drastic, but in order to continue her very destructive habits of relying on emotional eating, she then starts purging. So she binges and purges and ends up in the cycle of bulimia. Mm-hmm. And as that's happening, other work issues, her boyfriend hates the fact that she's lost weight and breaks up with her because he's got his own set of issues.
Because he's the worst ever possible.
Yes. He really dislikes, he hates women and hates any woman that could be perceived as, I don't know, independent, having her own personality.
He's got mommy issues, and he takes it out on every other female presence in his life. He feels very threatened by any woman who he sees as competent or confident or desirable at all, and so he just wants to be able to go home to someone who has such negative self-esteem that she just absolutely does not confront him on any issues at all, and is just always just tripping over herself, happy to see him.
What he wants is a dog, but instead what he's looking for
an ugly dog.
A girlfriend.
He wants an ugly dog.
Yes. An ugly dog that no one else will want. Yeah. No one else could possibly try to steal from him.
If he got a dog with too high of a pedigree, it would make him feel self-conscious. Like, that's what we're talking about here.
Yes, yeah. He's...
truly the scum of the earth.
Yes. He's awful. The bitch from work is awful. A lot of the people in her workplace are awful. Her boss as well. There's just a lot of awful people. She's not in a great situation. And despite her drastic measures of binging and purging and losing a huge amount of weight, it doesn't actually help her situation at all. In fact, she spirals more and more. She's not actually getting any kind of nourishment because of this eating disorder behavior.
Yeah, and it doesn't help her with her job at all.
No, it doesn't help with her job. Doesn't help with the relationship. She doesn't feel happier. She doesn't feel like she's working so hard to try and become this person that she thinks will make her life perfect. And as the eccentric old man told her, like, that won't make you happy. If you're not happy in your situation now, all of your problems aren't caused because you're fat, right? There's a lot of other issues here, and just getting skinny or hot or whatever is not going to fix your life.
Yeah.
You're not inherently going to be happy because you've lost weight. It can, the reality is that sometimes, yes, it can certainly contribute to people's sense of self-image and things. But if you've got a whole bunch, if you hate your job, if you hate your relationship, if you don't have any relationships in the positive sense, then you're gonna stay sad. Like, there's still loneliness, there's still bad things happening.
I think
it's not the magic bullet that cures happiness or that creates happiness.
I think there's this it's bringing up ideas of, like, there's so much in our culture and our society that says if women are just skinny and beautiful, if they're skinny enough and beautiful enough, then their lives will go perfectly. And that any fat person, or anyone perceived as fat, needs to drop everything and lose weight first and foremost. That has to be their priority. Like, their problem is that they are fat, and they will be a problem until they are not fat anymore. And, like, that messaging is so strong and so unavoidable and so just the level of cruelty and vitriol that this message is delivered to fat women with. Speaking as a fat woman as well. It really does make you feel like, okay, I'm fat. I have to be skinny. I have to. Yeah. That's the first thing I have to do. But it's not true. Because, like, the first thing she has to do is, like, sort out all of these emotional problems she's dealing with. You know, get a therapist, talk to somebody. She's got, that high school friend that she meets up with who, like, has also gained a bit of weight since graduating and seems to have a much healthier relationship with that. So it's like, you know, there are people she could reach out to, but right now she's got no support system. And she's surrounded by people who make her feel even worse about herself. And it's turned her into a negative and bitter person, who really just can't handle seeing, I mean, any other woman, really. Like, if a woman is skinny, she's competing with them. If a woman is fat, they're just as disgusting as she is. Like, she's not in a positive headspace at all. And I think it's sort of that, like, messaging that the book kind of gets at to me. That,
No. I certainly agree. I think there's, as well, as someone who maybe arguably, well, not arguably, who's, as a woman who was also a lot heavier in my past, and I'm certainly not skinny, let's just put it that way, but I do recognize, and I think it's a very, your point, it is culturally seen as, like, women have to be perceived as one thing, like, beautiful, skinny and beautiful, and really there's a lot of shallowness in that regardless of any other thing, your personality, your achievements, your intelligence, that doesn't matter as long as you're pretty and skinny, right? And so the internalization of that is so strong that it can make you feel like you don't have any value until you do become that perfect ideation of what a woman is.
Yeah, you're like less than the bare minimum.
Yes, and it's kind of exacerbated in a lot of senses, because if you have internalized that and you don't have any self-confidence, it's a lot harder to feel desirable and to seek romantic relationships or friendships or try to push for like job progression. It can have a really detrimental effect on your mental health when you feel like you aren't worthy of those things because you haven't reached that point where you know, you are the perfect ideal of womanhood, and therefore you deserve those things, right? So there's a lot of that going on in this, but I think it's also really, I mean, aside from just the negativity of the tailspin that she ends up in with this very disordered eating cycle, that she pushes herself so much to the point that, yes, she's skinny and, you know, quote unquote prettier. She's had her hair done. She's, you know, updated her style, and people still don't want to be around her because she's almost like scary in the amount of weight that she's lost. She's skeletal. She's very obviously not healthy. And so, and people can recognize that, right? Like, there are people who are naturally slim and don't have a lot of weight on their body, and there are people who, you know, really restrict the amount that they eat, or they just supercharge the amount of exercise, or practice in disordered eating, and don't look healthy. So, you know, it's...
I also think there was an interesting... during this point where she is, you know, has become so thin, there is a reference to, like, her taking up less space. Like, not just physically, but, like, in people's minds. So it's like, maybe she's not getting commented on as often about how she looks, but that doesn't mean that she's getting more compliments. It just means that people are ignoring her more, and it makes her feel even smaller. Which, I mean, highlights just the objectification of women in general, and that it's like, it doesn't really matter what you look like. You know, you're just an object to the rest of the world, which is sort of a through line throughout all of Anno's work.
Yes.
Certainly the ones about sex workers get into a lot the idea that, you know, women are just objects to the world and to culture. But I think it's also present here, where it's like, when she's fat, you know, she finds people who see her physical body as useful to them, and so they use it. And when she's skinny, you know, she finds people who, you know, the people who found her useful with the body that she had before don't find her useful anymore. There are other people who find her useful with a skinnier body, or maybe she's failing to be useful because she's too skinny all of a sudden. But it's so much just people focusing on what her body can do for them. There's not really anybody throughout the book who actually seems to care about her. Like, even the snake oil, you know, weight loss lady. She, you know, she feels some sort of dedication to this woman, just, like, because she's a client who's paid her, like, $9,500 or something insane to give her, you know, totally fake, useless heat treatments, and then tell her that she should eat less. Like, what? You expected my program that you paid $9,500 for to actually make you thinner? No, you gotta eat less and exercise more. What do you mean? You thought this would do something for you?
I'm giving you a facial. That's doing something, right?
But she's like, you know, I think inarguably, like, the most sympathetic presence in this woman's life, and she's still just there to take her money and, like, tell her to get skinnier. Like, it's still just so focused on, like, what use she is getting physically from this girl. it's a very cynical take on things. And I think that Anna's works in general are quite cynical in their view of humanity. Mm-hmm. Especially men. But yeah.
We've got a handful of men in this particular series, and they're all awful. Mm-hmm. Except for, well, even the old
no, he's old awful.
Man is a creep.
He's horrible.
He's awful.
She goes to improve herself with the money that he gave her, and he uses his intense amount of capital to ruin even that, putting multiple women out of a job in the process. He is not a good man.
No, they're all awful. They're all just not good. And I think, to your point about, like, taking up space, and with her losing weight, it's not that, you know, she's getting less insults, but she's not getting more compliments, right? So that really, it's an, how do I phrase this? There's so much, because she's surrounded by the same people she's always been surrounded by. They're still gonna think of her as, like, useless or weird, or, you know, not, she doesn't have a good reputation at work, and her losing weight hasn't changed that reputation, aside from you remove the word, like, the word fat from the descriptor, right?
Well, but it's
rather than the fat, useless, you know, office lady, she's just the useless office lady.
Yeah, but neurotic. It's also like, did she remove the word fat from the descriptor? I think because she's stuck with the same people who saw her being fat as a personal failing, now she's just become the woman who was fat. Like, they're still seeing her as, like, oh, she's trying too hard now. Like, she used to be fat, so she's, like, trying too hard. They're still seeing her as someone who was fat, someone who had that personal failing.
Which is such a double standard as well, because, like, there's other women in the office who talk about dieting and talk about, like, all of these similar cultural things, who are more traditionally attractive, right? They are not heavy, but they still worry about their weight. They still worry about the same, you know, issues of being seen as valuable, or, you know, being the ideal woman.
Yeah, but
because they are already generally, or, like, standardly attractive, they don't get that same kind of vitriol.
Yeah, well, it's like if a woman if a skinny woman, right, talks about wanting to go on a diet, it's, like, seen as kind of cute. But if a fat woman talks about wanting to go on a diet, there's so much judgment around it of, like, oh, well, she's not going to actually do it. She's not going to go through with it. She doesn't have the self-control. And if she actually does go through with it and lose the weight, a lot of times it's still like, oh, well, she's trying too hard. It's like there's no way to win if you're a woman in a fat body. Especially, like, I would say in Japan, where it's much more socially acceptable to just, like, casually say some really, really awful things about women and weight.
Yeah. Well, this isn't inherently a societal or Japanese thing. It isn't inherently a Japanese thing, because I will say that, you know, I, over the course of my life, have lost some weight, you know, I hate the word diet, right, because that implies a short-term change to something to hit a certain, like, scale goal or, you know, image thing, rather than a holistic look at your life and trying to build healthier habits or whatever. But the amount of people who do start dieting for whatever reason, right, who then get so many snide comments from friends and family once they do start losing weight about like, oh, you're looking great, but don't lose any more, or else, it's unhealthy what you're doing. You need to be worried about. And it's like, well, how about you focus on yourself and I focus on myself? Unless it's a super, like, major change and it is very unhealthy, people just stay in your own lanes, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to be commenting on whether or not somebody isn't eating French fries with their burger versus a milkshake and French fries with their burger.
Well, and it's also, like, level of familiarity, too. Like, there's this idea that, like, just because someone is, like, overweight or fat in any capacity, that it's, like, that gives anybody at all, like, free license to just comment about how they look, what they're doing, what they're eating. It's like, and it's like, if it's a family member noticing, like, an unhealthy habit may be developing or something concerning, it's totally appropriate for them to bring it up and talk about it. Some coworker does not need to be commenting on your eating habits. Like, that's weird. That's a weird thing to do.
It's and there is a certain amount of people who do think that it is in their right to talk about, or not even talk about it, to force their opinion on you when you're just doing your own thing. You're like, hey, you don't leave people alone.
I don't talk about your lunch. Why are you talking about mine?
Sandra, I could give you so much shit over what you're eating. Don't get me started. But
are those boiled carrots?
But anyway, this particular book, I don't remember if it was my first Anno work many, many years ago, but it's always one that stood out to me because it is I think it's just pertinent. It's just unfortunately, it's one of those fables or parables that seems to just be very universally consistent, especially in modern society where and even worse now with social media and all of young people, male and female, full stop, getting these messages about how they should look, how they should act, what makes you desirable or more attractive or more valuable, and then the pressures on people to try and hit that, which is they're never going to be able to do because it's not reality. So I've always really, enjoy is maybe not the right word, but I've always really appreciated how this particular book has put very plainly, like, and really captured the disconnect from, like, that messaging that especially women get about attractiveness and weight, and that being directly tied to weight versus the reality and how people internalize that and then therefore blame everything in their life on that aspect, regardless of situation.
Yeah. For me, I think the first time I read this book, I don't think it really stuck in my mind that much. I don't know if I just, like, wasn't at a place in my life where I, like, got it. Or I don't know why. Upon rereading it for this podcast episode, I definitely feel like I got a lot more out of it, and it stuck with me more. I still, for me, the particular brand of cynicism here it wasn't very helpful to me. And I don't necessarily think that's a criticism of the work so much as it's just not what I was interested in reading, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's a very valid point.
It's also like after reading her other books, I do think she has some internalized stuff about fat people that kind of stood out negatively within this work because I had read it in quick succession with some of her other works. It's certainly not a very, like, positive portrayal of a fat woman. Even if it does get into, like, why she is the way that she is and does the things that she does. It doesn't really provide a counterexample, and it doesn't really provide any kind of way out. Which is pretty typical of Anno's books, I think. Like, she doesn't really show a way out. She's kind of just pointing out how dire the situation is for women. And I think that that's perfectly valid, and it's important to have those stories. But I think that in this case, I would have found it more meaningful if she had included other types of fat experiences. For me personally. And that's in close called Fat. The cover's really cool for this book too. With the scary, like, skinny lady eating a sandwich that looks like a corpse of some kind of animal. It's great. Now, the other three works we're going to talk about are all connected in terms of similar subject matter. I kind of want to start with Memoirs of Amorous Gentlemen, if that's okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
This one takes place in sort of a more high-end brothel in Paris.
Yes, yeah.
I don't know, I'm not sure if it's meant to be set in a particular time period. I guess it's just kind of now. But it's... I don't remember if there's a year or something. But, yeah, it's set in a high-end brothel in Paris. It's, starring a woman who works there named Colette, I believe. Who is just kind of, the conceit is that she's writing down, her experiences, mostly just, like, the different curiosities she encounters, like the different fetishes of these men who come by, and how her shop accommodates them, in a journal that she's received from a client. It also goes through, like, her, again, like, not ideal relationship with a man. She's in a relationship with a gigolo who, shows up every once in a while to beg for money, and then just goes and sleeps with more women for money, and just wastes it all on, you know, all kinds of stuff. And she knows it, and she keeps going back to him anyway, and it seems like that's what brings her some modicum of joy in her life, just kind of working as a body for sale. Yeah. This, is definitely the most positive portrayal of sex work out of,
the three.
The three. it seems kind of fun working at this brothel. Like, the ladies seem to, they get into their drama or whatever, but, I mean, the most dire, like, bullying that happens turns out to be something that Colette wrote as a fiction, so, the women seem to get along all right. There's a sense of camaraderie there. The house comes together to accommodate some of the more eccentric male patrons. And Colette is just kind of, she's got an arrangement going that she doesn't seem to be super unhappy with. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, especially because, to your point, this title and Colette and her relationship with her, just awful boy that her lover, who takes advantage of her, but she's just like, well, that's just him, I know he's awful, but I love him all the same. Is very... It's an interesting contrast with the relationship we see in Sakuran, where it's the same deal, although our main character in that series really, I mean, she thrives in the red light district, but she hates it. She is, but she hates it, and from the moment she got there has been trying to escape. Now in her older and wiser years of like 21, she has recognized that you play the game, but there's no escaping the situation. But comparatively, her relationship, her grand romance, is just another piece to this. Like, this is it's a beautiful but awful prison, right? It's a birdcage. And there's no real... The women don't have good relationships with each other, and there's no camaraderie in the same sense that there is in Amorous Gentlemen. They're not friends. They're not close. They're all in the same situation, and they might, gossip and obviously spend time with each other, but they're not, they're not a house full of rowdy sisters, who live in the same experience.
Yeah, well, and it's like such a strict hierarchy among the geisha of the Yoshiwara district. That ends up, I mean, it exists to kind of pit these women against each other instead of, against the system that oppresses them. But yeah, in Amorous Gentlemen, they're all kind of doing their thing. I kind of like how positive it is about just sex, and this is a series that features, positive portrayals of women of various body types and sizes. They're all kind of portrayed as equally desirable to, a number of male patrons. They all have their clients, right? And, they look beautiful in the lingerie that they wear. And, we have these sort of comedic anecdotes about particularly eccentric patrons who get the whole, like, whorehouse together to put on their particular fetish as a sort of almost like a play. And that's fun. Ultimately, I have less to say about this one than I do about especially Sakuran, which is why I kind of am thinking to save Sakuran for the last.
Okay, yeah.
but because it seems like you as well also probably have more to say about that one. I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, no. I think it's the Amorous Gentleman. I would say is I don't want to say a welcome respite, but it is certainly a lot more positive.
Yeah.
Compared to a lot of Anno's other works, there is more of that community and shared situation, I guess, that you do see in situations and communities like this. You know, they are living in close quarters and they're living the same, not the same life, but you know, ultimately the same life, right? So there's a lot to relate to each other, and it's just nice to have a series of hers where women are supporting each other and not tearing each other down.
Also, like, where you have, to some extent, like, women who are in sex work because they like it. Not all of the women in this brothel are in that situation, but I think Colette was kind of just ended up as a sex worker. As opposed to, like, Sakuran, where she was, like, sold
into it, yeah.
Or Buffalo Five Girls, where, But, yeah, Colette just kind of ended up in this place because she wasn't really fitting in some other jobs, and it turns out that she's good at it, and she even seems to kind of thrive in it. And certainly, like, the women there, you know, they talk about enjoying sex and, like, enjoying making customers happy. And it's kind of nice to see that side of...
yes.
That side of sex work that, like, ideally would be the norm, but unfortunately very much is not the norm. So, yeah, I like having a series that is about sex workers that portrays it as a job that people can choose to do and be good at. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. So, from that, did we want to talk about Buffalo Five Girls?
Yeah. Buffalo Five Girls is mess. It's it's got some ideas that are interesting, but it doesn't seem to know, in my opinion, what it wants to be, and it did kind of get canceled before it found itself. Memoirs of Amorous Gentleman also stops, like, pretty abruptly, because of presumably cancellation. I don't know the details. But... And that one felt like it knew where it was going. Like, you could see the seeds of, like, you know, where Anno was perhaps intending to take the relationship between Colette and her shitty boyfriend. And Colette and her relationship with her work. But Buffalo Five Girls is like, I'm not quite sure Anno knew what she was going to do here. And she certainly never got a chance to do it. The setting's interesting. It's like, I don't know, it's the Wild West, but it's also not pastoral. It's like, what if the Wild West was now? I don't know. You know, and it's these, like, it's kind of like a sucker punch thing where you got, like, a group of girls who are escaped sex workers who are still in hot, sexy outfits and fighting the people trying to bring them back. And ostensibly forming, like, a camaraderie, I feel like that's achieved with the first two girls, and maybe even the third one, but the fourth one is like everybody hates her and she hates everyone, so I don't know what was going on there.
Yeah.
There's not really a grain of like where they could grab onto to make a more positive relationship. Yeah. What do you think of Buffalo Five Girls, G?
I mean, a mess. Like it's yeah, there's a lot going on, but not very much happening.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. There's like
there.
Yeah, keep going.
No, there's a lot of action. There's a lot of like very bombastic. I mean, Sucker Punch is the perfect comparison, right? Where it's girls dressed sexy and they've got this backstory and there's a premise there, but it's not. There's not a lot of cohesion aside from let's watch this girl like not even get revenge, but you know, do a cool thing and then yeah.
Yep.
Do you like Cool Thing?
Yeah.
I hope you like Cool Thing.
And there's like a super drug lizard that gives them superpowers too.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Like, you know, a badass group of like escaped sex workers, like, you know, outrunning their captives using mysterious superpowers kind of sounds awesome. But like it does not come together. Also, the men in the series are so confusing. It's like, am I supposed to like them? Am I supposed to hate them? I don't know.
Don't know.
Our girls seem to just fall for them at the drop of a hat, which I would say is kind of an Anno thing. She tends to portray love as like this kind of all-consuming disease. Her characters fall fast and hard, even and especially when they know it's not good for them. In this case, we have like the main girl ending up with like the sheriff who's ostensibly chasing after them, but sometimes he helps them, but we don't really know what he's after. But like, I also am not really curious to find out what he's after. I think he's mostly after some pussy and not much else.
Yeah.
But it seems like I'm supposed to find him charming or alluring in some way, and I don't. So, there's also the one, like, feminine-looking guy who, just gets tons of homophobic comments directed at him, and it's like, whoa, where is this coming from?
What the hell? I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah. Like, I don't like this much. And I think there was an attempt to give him and his brother, like, a tragic backstory, but, like, I don't care, so... yeah. This one's more of a miss. You know, go for one of the other two, sex worker stories. If you want to read, you know, Moyoco Anno's manga about sex workers, not this one. So.
No.
And then read Enclosed Called Fat, because that one's good too.
Yes.
Alright.
But yeah, let's get to the other, I guess, main... This is one that probably more people have read because this also came out in print. The previous two mentioned have never gotten a print release.
Yeah.
But Enclosed Called Fat and Sakuran have been released.
Yep.
Both by Vertical.
And they, I believe, are both still available. Enclosed Called Fat is easy to get in paperback. I know Sakuran was not for a long time, and I'm not sure if that's changed.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't checked. I still have my copy.
Yep. I still have it. They can pry it from my cold dead hands. Um, Sakuran is, it's about a girl named Kiyoha, uh, who is sold into the Yoshiwara Red Light District, a brothel there, when she's, like, gosh, like a friggin' toddler.
Very young, yeah.
And it's about her, like, starting out as a maid in the brothel, but being recognized as a girl with good potential for good looks. And so she is put on the track to become an apprentice to an Oiran, and then she rises the ranks until she becomes a top-ranking Oiran herself. And Oiran being like a high-ranking courtesan, popular courtesan. And yeah. Kiyoha is a very strong-willed, very independent girl and then woman. She really doesn't want anything to do with the brothel that she's in. She resents her situation. She gets in trouble all the time, and for that she gets beaten. Yeah. She basically just has a horrible time. But eventually she learns how to play the game. She learns how to use her sort of strong-willed nature and make it alluring to male patrons, and she becomes one of the most popular oirang in Yoshiwara. But she never really stops dreaming of escape. She tries to run away multiple times as an apprentice, each time getting caught and brought back and beaten. And yeah, the one time she seems to have found kind of a positive confidant, another Shinzo, so a newly graduated, I guess. Newly debuted is a better word.
Yeah.
Geisha. She ends up killing herself. So there is definitely, like, there's a sense of hopelessness that permeates this book. It's quite a heavy read, even though there's moments of respite because Kiyoha is also quite a funny person. But it's not a book for the faint of heart, certainly.
No, this one's bleak, much bleaker than
yes.
the last two.
And the ending makes it even more bleak.
Yes, yeah.
But for me, this is actually my favorite of Anno's manga. I think it really gets at something in terms of the impossibility of real agency for women. Particularly, in this part of the world at this time period, in the specific ways that it depicts, but also just in society in general, and for, women who are selling their bodies in particular, that, the world ultimately sees women as commodities to be bought and sold, and that's not really something that can be escaped. It's, again, Anno's here to present a problem and not to provide solutions. So, I guess, I want to spoil the ending in a minute, but before I do, did you have some thoughts to add?
I mentioned a little bit earlier about her relationship with her romantic interests and how that kind of parallels the relationship. It parallels the relationship that we've seen. Well, romance really isn't what Anno's going for. I don't know that she has a lot of hope for her characters finding love, or reciprocated love, maybe is the right word. And I think it's a interesting. I think it's done well in how the main character Sakuran, she's very adamant that she won't fall for a customer and make the mistakes of geisha past, but then finds herself doing pretty much the same thing, falling for the empty, the platitudes and the lies of a customer, and attaching to that spark of hope or whatever you want to call it, of a meaningful relationship in this terrible situation, and also a means of escape, right? Because geisha,
they could be bought out.
Bought out by a customer and then become their wife, which is an escape from that life. And if someone who you love is able to do that, then happily ever after. But very often, again, empty lies of oh yes, I'll free you ASAP. Meanwhile, visiting every other girl in the area,
and not having any money because they keep spending it on courtesans.
Well, exactly.
It makes you wonder how many bums Anno has dated in her life.
Well, I don't know. But I think it's an interesting. I enjoyed the fact that for all of her spunk and vigor and adamancy, that she wouldn't be the thing that she saw and really didn't have any respect for. She still fell into that trap, and realizing the self-realization that she's not inherently better or different than the other girls. I really enjoy this one too. It's again, enjoy is maybe not the right word, but it's I feel appropriate in enjoy is it doesn't make you feel good at the end.
So I wanted to mention first you mentioned sort of, we talked about how Amorous Gentleman has much more camaraderie between the girls, and that is true. Sakuran, though, I think it does show, in a sense, kind of these girls having a unique relationship with each other. In that, yes, they are petty and cruel with each other because they're constantly in competition. But there is sort of a mutual understanding there because they are in similar situations. And I think that the balance that the book strikes is quite interesting. That you have these women who have to be cruel to each other to survive, but they also kind of, there is the seed of solidarity there that is never allowed to sprout, I feel like. But there are moments of, like, understanding that are heartening to see, but also, like, almost even more sad because you know that they'll never germinate. I also wanted to talk about the boyfriend, repeat client, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah.
He very much fits. To me, he's very similar to not just the boyfriend in Amorous Gentleman, but also the boyfriend in Clothes Called Fat.
Yes. Yeah.
In that Anno typically presents men as exclusively looking for a reflection of their desires in a woman and basically being incapable of truly connecting with women. In this case, you know, I mean, this guy's introduced with, like, other geisha making fun of him, like, you know, fancying himself the tragic poet who comes in to, you know, be the one who truly understands his chosen girl. But all the while, like, every time he just eventually moves on to a different girl. So it's almost like this is his fetish.
Yeah.
Not almost like I think this is his fetish. Yeah, his fetish is, you know, role-playing an earnest romance with a geisha. And feeling like he's a much better person than he actually is. I think he gets off on that.
Yeah.
And I think that Kiyoha knows that, but she can't help getting entangled in that trap anyway. Because, again, this is another book that kind of portrays falling in love as being just this unstoppable force that just, like, takes over your whole body and mind until you're just consumed with yearning for the other person. Which, I mean, she doesn't exactly have much else to fill her days with other than getting her body violated by gross men. You know, so if I was in that situation, I'd probably end up the same way. And with that, I kind of want to spoil the ending here. Which is sort of cyclical. It's kind of the same as, like, in Clothes Called Fat has this very, like, you know, she's caught in a trap that she's never going to be able to escape, kind of thing. Sakuran is kind of the same thing, where Kiyoha finally, like, she runs away, and knowing that she's going to be caught, but she just wants to see, like, her lover, and she goes and she finds him and she sees him. She just meets eyes with him and he gives her this, like, apologetic smile, and she says, oh, he's just a monster, just like the rest. And eventually she does get caught by the police and guards who are pursuing her. She goes back, she gets beaten and, you know, tortured. But when she's asked, like, so, how did they catch you? She says, catch me? I wasn't caught. I came back of my own accord. And it's just this admission of, oh, I'm never going to be able to escape this system. Even if I get out for good, I'm just going to keep being used, and bought and sold by men. And by this society that just doesn't value me and doesn't believe that I have agency. So, Yeah, it's even though it ends with her making this like confident, you know, knowing smile, it's like it's such a bleak admission of defeat, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those series that like really highlights just how, for all the fact that these women are coveted, right? Like they are put in the front of shop for men to ogle and make a decision over them, right? They aren't seen as, I mean, they're seen as very desirable, but they're not something that people want, like, long term. They want to indulge in a dream and maybe spend some money, you know, fulfilling that desire and that dream for a little while, but it's not a true, all of that whole system isn't a true reflection of a relationship or of an actual interest in this person. It's just, you're very beautiful, I want to have sex with you. Here is money, you are now mine to have sex with. It's not a desire of the person, it's a desire of the object that is this person, right? And to that point, we mentioned, like, a lot of, well, not a lot of times, but geisha do get bought out by wealthy clients who want a, you know, want a beautiful wife, but it's not the same as starting a relationship with somebody that you meet through a different circumstance. There's always going to be this level of, I've paid for you, you are in my debt, you have to do this thing. You have to live this life to these standards that I expect, because I have done so much for you. I have literally changed your life. Yeah, which is is not a uplifting message, but
no,
it is a reality, and was a reality for a lot of people.
Yep. There's also a lot of, Anno, I think, gets very visceral with, like, I mean, just her art, right? Like, when she draws, like, a sex scene, like, it's very matter of fact.
Yeah.
The way that she draws women, they're very beautiful, they're lithe, they look like fashion, like, illustrations. But, you know, they're also bony, and they've got hair, and they're, like, you know, she's portraying things very, like, frankly. And there's some very visceral portrayals and descriptions of, like, just the ways women's bodies are being used. You know, like, Kyoha's debut, right, I think is pretty harrowing. Because she is, like, she's a child. She's 17, right? That's when she becomes, trying to remember. She becomes an apprentice when she, like, the day she has her period. That's when she becomes an apprentice. But I don't think she actually debuts as someone who is for sale until she, like, moves up to a debut courtesan. But still, she's, like, 17. She's a child.
Yeah. Very young.
And apparently it's, was considered good luck to deflower a newly debuting geisha. So you can imagine the kind of men who line up to have that experience. So I think that element of just being very frank about the mistreatment of these women's and girls' bodies sort of adds to this element of really emphasizing that they are just commodities to be bought and paid for within this system and within this line of work especially. Yeah. I think I've gotten to just about all that I wanted to say. Any sort of last thoughts?
No, I think Anno's manga aren't for the faint of heart. There are some quite confronting stuff in her titles, and I think they're very well done, and I think they're very important. She is a master at what the type of this very cynical worldview. But this isn't an easy read. It is going to, or none of her works are easy to read insofar as you have to be engaged. And like you said earlier, when you initially read Enclosed Called Fat, you didn't get it, maybe, or it didn't speak to you, and which I understand. It's one that I do think that like people should read just as a baseline to see the kinds of stories that Josei can tell. And I do think that the cynicism of this society that women are stuck in, and to a certain extent there's like it does reflect reality strongly. Like there's a lot of, you could always make the argument, it's like, oh well, it is very cynical and life's not that bad as a woman and blah, like all of these things, which to an extent yes, but also no. You know, life is tough as a woman. It's easy to get, especially as a woman, right, to get caught in these platitudes of, you know, you can complain, but there's no changing it, and what, it's actually not that bad, and that's just because you haven't been radicalized and seen the systems that you're trapped in. But I think it's just an important one, right? Like whether or not you pull or relate to these characters, I think honestly, like, you'd have to be trying to not engage, to not see the relevance, despite the setting, despite the, you know, the differences, the historical time period, of a lot of these things that are being criticized or being showcased, still existing and still needing to be recognized. To your point, Anno doesn't give any solutions, because I don't think there is a solution. There's certainly no easy solutions.
No.
There are practices and behaviors and community that you can work in and work towards to help support you, but society's not going to change, right? Like it is a very slow process, and there's a lot that will just never change because of inherent human, humanity. And the historical and continued belief that women are lesser than men, right? Like, there's this, we live in such a patriarchal society across the board in pretty much every community that exists in the world, that it can be confronting. It can be confronting to see that on the page and have to then, I guess, interrogate your own experience and your own life and your own relationships. And I mean, God, I hope you're not in the situation that any of these characters are in, right? Like, you don't want to be feeling this way about yourself and have people around you that make you feel awful. That should never be anyone's experience. But there's a lot of people who put up with a lot of shit because they don't think that they're worth more than that. Mm-hmm. Because they've been told that they're not worth love or respect or desire or whatever it is. And, get radicalized, right?
In conclusion, let Moyoco Anno radicalize you. Yeah. Overall, like, I am very leery of calling works, like, feminist, because a lot of people, I think, use that to mean, like, I liked the female characters in this book. Yeah. But feminism is a political movement, and for me, I would never describe a work as being feminist unless it is explicitly about feminist political themes and issues. Anno's works are. So if you're looking for some feminist literature in josei manga in particular, Anno is a great place to go to. And I think both of us would highly recommend, in particular, In Clothes Called Fat and Sakuran. If you want something that's a little bit less soul-destroying, then Memoirs of Amorous Gentlemen is also quite good.
Yeah, you can skip Buffalo Five Girls.
Yeah, maybe not that one.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for listening. Next month we'll be talking about I guess technically 2 series. They exist in the same universe.
Yep.
We're going to be talking about the Dawn of the Arcana / the King's Beast
Cinematic universe.
Cinematic universe. Arcana's been finished for a long time. King's Beast is still ongoing. Both are available in print as well as on the Viz app. So, if you have any questions for these shoujo, fantasy, romance, but also other stuff, drama, politics series, let us know.
Yeah.
As always, you can find us on all of the podcasting platforms where you listen to things. Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I don't know any other ones, but those are the 2 main ones. As well as on YouTube. You can find this at my YouTube channel, Simply G, all one word. You can also find both of us on social media. We are at I'm Blue Sky now.
Yep.
And the podcast is also on Blue Sky. I need to remember to mention that because we do have a dedicated Blue Sky podcast, which is at Read Write number 2 left. So all of the new episodes get posted there as well. You can find me on my social medias. I am Simply G on Blue Sky as well. And Ray is Whimsical...
Wimpix.
I'll get it right one of these months.
WHIMPIX.
And both will be linked in the description below. But yeah, thanks everyone for listening. And we'll see you in the next episode. Bye till then.
Bye guys.